G'day guys and welcome, my name is Michael and I'm the DeadAussieGamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Today's video is inspired by a game that I've recently started playing over on my Twitch channel called Wildermyth. It's a turn-based role-playing game that is set in a mythical world. It's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure sort of game. Now, this is not a promotion video. I haven't been paid by the company or anything like that, but I do recommend go checking out the game because as a professional game master, I have learned quite a few little techniques that came about from having played the game that I now want to kind of take over and use in my D&D games. So I wanted to talk to you guys about what I'd learned, share some of those ideas, and get your thoughts on it because, you know, I think it's pretty cool. So the major thing that I think I've picked up from this game is narrative downtime. What do I mean by that? Well, when we traditionally think about downtime, we think about our preparation for adventure, or the lull in space between one encounter to another. This could be you getting some gear crafted. It could be you going shopping. It could be a moment of foreshadowing just before the encounters begin. Whatever it is, downtime is usually, in a way, an active period between major encounters, or between, you know, just the story and the major plot points. Downtime has always been a struggle. It's always been something that I think a lot of GMs have trouble with and will more often than not just override completely. I know there are lots of GMs who are out there who pretty much turn around and say, yeah, just shop in between games and then we'll come back and 2 weeks have passed. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. While playing the game Wildermyth, a lot of the encounters are usually prefaced by a small narrative scene, almost like a clip from the middle of the journey. Sometimes these clips have absolutely nothing to do with the major plot, has nothing to do with the adventure or what's to lie ahead. Some of these things are just nice little narrative moments that are captured moments of time as the players just exist in the world. Now, I know this sounds weird, and I know that I will not be able to explain it in its full method so that you guys can appreciate it, which is why Wildermyth goes on the top of this, because go play the game and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's like this. A lot of immersion in your story, a lot of immersion in your world comes from your players interacting with the encounters, with the adventure. You go to a town, you're preparing to do something. You know, if you go to a town and you tell your players to just explore, first thing they'll do is they'll go to a tavern or an inn or something and try to find a quest. They'll try to find something to do. Now, the narrative downtime that I've seen in Wildermyth is not about that. It's about you simply being in that world, existing as the world rotates. If I were to liken the experience as a player, it's like sitting in a warm bath versus you going swimming. Right? If you swim, you have a direction. You're moving your way through the world and you're trying to get to somewhere. You're trying to do something. Whereas this is more like just letting yourself float in the world. Letting yourself just be here. One of the great encounters that I did while I was playing the game was one of the characters I was controlling was celebrating, well, I say celebrating, was observing respect on a day that they had lost a loved one. And I thought that was amazing. I was like, how come I never do that? How come I never have a moment where I tell one of my players, like, this date happens to be the date that your village had burnt down. You know, tell me what's one thing that your character does to commemorate this anniversary? And actually get my players to do something. Actually, you know what? Like, no, there's no quest. There's no giant bar guest who's going to come and rip you to pieces for going off into the wilderness to go light some candles for your fallen village. Of course not. But we are going to go on this journey together. We're going to go watch and witness your character simply being a part of the legend, being a part of this world. And I think those moments are so few and far between from the games that I've seen, the games that I've run, that I kind of want to now add that to my toolbox to throw in. Why? Number one, immersion is very, very tricky because there are so many ways to build immersion. And when you build it, it's great. But there are even more ways for immersion to just snap and break off, and then suddenly you're just at a table playing games. Narrative downtime is a wonderful way to bring and a quick way as well, to bring that narrative back and to bring that level of immersion back to your players at the table. Secondly, it is a great way to subvert the expectations that you as a GM, and this may be just an assumption, you can correct me, that you as a GM are only invested in checkpoints. The checkpoints of your plot, the checkpoints of your encounter, the checkpoints of how much time we have left before we need to call this game, whatever it is. Subverting those expectations by having a moment where the players simply exist is choice. It's absolutely wonderful. I've done it maybe once, and that was purely by accident, and only because I wanted to, again, annoy my players. And that's just me. I'm a jerk that way. So I had my players on a quest where they were traveling on a wagon. They came across a guy who asked for a ride down the road. His farm was a little bit further down the way. He had twisted his ankle, and the group helped him. The group went through this whole thing where they're like, I wonder if he's a shapeshifter. Oh, I wonder if he's going to try and mug us. Is he leading us into an ambush? They actually left him on the cart. They went and searched his house, and they said, there's no one here. And he's like, yeah, I know. Thank you for taking me to my house. And he went in, and that was it. That was it. And at the time, it was still a really great encounter. I loved it. My players loved it. But I left that be. I never really explored that as an actual tool because, again, in the back of my mind, I just did that to kind of like throw a curveball at my players. Now, having seen a game where that is a major feature, I kind of want to do that, I kind of want to have these moments where that narrative is now just a wholesome, self-contained thing that my players are going to enjoy. And this adventure, this game has just tons of really cool ideas for what could constitute that as an idea. Maybe one of the players wanders off. He finds an ad for looking for heroes in this other region that's completely different to the region that the group is in. Now, because this is downtime and it's going to take 3-4 weeks before we get that suit of full plate made in mithril from our local shopkeeper, sure, let's go and find out what's happening over here. And turns out, there were a group of heroes here. Unfortunately, they went out and they weren't as experienced as they thought they'd be, and they were killed by goblins. The town is in mourning. It's a bit sad, but, what are you going to do about it? And that's it. That's it. You don't need to have... you could have, obviously, the typical quest of, yes, but we need to find survivors. Or you could have the quest of, yes, no, but it's a scam and they're all bandits. You could twist the story that way and turn it into a great narrative. And that, I think, is another massive strength of it, is that you can, at that point, choose to have it be nothing and have it be something that's just allowed your players to build and establish relationships with the NPCs, to have your players have more investment and have more of an understanding of the world you've created. Or, if you can read your players well, you can, just like that, twist those narrative downtimes into an active side quest. And that, for me, is the other massive benefit of these. Narrative downtimes can, on a dime, be turned into an adventure. And that, for me, is priceless. It's amazing to be able to do that. So the better you become at creating downtimes that are entirely narrative-based, that have no conflict, the better you will be at creating those conflicts in those moments and allowing your players to then be massively invested in whatever you're doing, no matter how insignificant it is to your major overarching plot. Your major overarching plot could be something like, a lich is waking up after a 10,000-year nap. The mountains are shaking, there's earthquakes, the rivers are dying, whatever. Cool. Well, what do? Turns out our group is currently looking for game in the middle of the forest. Fantastic. Along their way, they find a campfire. The campfire is died down. There's only embers remaining. They decide to track who had made this campfire and eventually come to a small cave where an elderly man rubs his leg. They sit down and they ask the elderly man, what happened? He says, I'm just old. Things are outpacing me nowadays. But I could use the company if you have the time to spare. And then they share a story. This story might mean nothing, or maybe the story is about a hero who actually did once upon a time rise up against the Lich. Might have a good ending, might have a bad ending. But because that downtime narrative with the hunter which led to nothing, was there, you can then blossom that into something cool and amazing. That's what I mean. That's what we're trying to do. That's what the importance of this whole thing is. Yeah, and I think it's great. I think Wildermyth nails it when it comes to using the narrative downtime idea, and I'm eager to use it a lot in my games. I guess the last thing I want to say here in regards to that is, I think it's important to remember that it's all about juggling, right? Downtime is important because it allows your players to catch their breath, and that's the important piece of the downtime. If you go from encounter to encounter to encounter to encounter, it adds stress, not just to your PCs, but to your players as well. The players feel like, it's like, man, when was the last time my character slept? Or when was the last time we actually had a chance to just, like, sharpen our weapons or get some new gear? Downtime is important because it allows your players to recharge their batteries. But just because you're taking that downtime mechanically does not mean you have to disconnect yourself from the story. Doesn't mean you have to disconnect yourself from the world around you. Build those relationships. Build that world around your characters. Take those moments to just ask your characters questions. Have other NPCs be interested in who they are. That, for me, is just quintessential. Right now, one of the techniques I use is what I like to call the campfire travel scene. It's very similar to the narrative downtime idea, where if I've got to travel for a number of days, I will roll a dice. It might be a d6, might be a d4, and I'll come up with that many questions. These will be general questions that my group will address as they are sitting around the campfire. So it might be like, your characters sit around the campfire and decide to reminisce about their favorite food. Where did it come from? What is it made of? Who cooked it for you last? What emotions and what feelings do your characters have remembering this dish, right? Little things like that don't do anything for the major story. They don't progress anything. They just let things sink. And just like I was saying with the whole, kind of being in a bath, it's like that. It's just you soaking in this narrative, in this world, in this story. And I think that's a very unique and very awesome thing. And play Wildermyth. Play Wildermyth if you want to see that, because I felt like that was the case every step of the way. Even if I knew nothing about these random characters that I was playing or I'd pick up along the road, it would take next to no time for me to be fully invested in their characters, in their place in the world, in their story. And that's great. That's what you want from a good role-playing game. That's what you want from your tabletop role-playing experience. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, go bang on that bell if you want to get notifications for more videos that we release. And if you want to watch me playing Wildermyth, head on over to our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/DeadAussieGamer, or come and visit us at the DeadAussieGamer live channel. Link will be in the banner above you, where I put all of my live plays and shows and things like that. So yeah, you can come check those out as well. Till next time, guys, as always, from me to you, game hard or die trying. Good night.